In the heart of West Africa, where the sun rises over Senegal's endless plains, a child was born who would challenge the world's understanding of history. His name, Cheick Anta Diop. To some, he was a visionary, to others, a rebel. But to the African world, he became a symbol of intellectual liberation. Cheick Anta Diop, physicist, historian, linguist, anthropologist, dedicated his life to answering one question: who were the ancient Egyptians, really? And more broadly, what is Africa's true place in human civilization? His findings would shake the foundations of academic institutions and ignite a renaissance in African identity that still burns today. Cheick Anta Diop was born on December 29, 1923, in the small village of Tietou in the Diorbal region of Senegal. From a young age, he was immersed in the traditions of the Wolof people, traditions rich with oral history, astronomy, philosophy, and codes of governance. In these fireside stories, young Cheick Anta learned that African civilizations had long possessed knowledge and wisdom, mathematical, spiritual, scientific. But in colonial schools, he heard a different tale, one that claimed Africa had contributed little to world civilization. This contradiction sparked a flame in him, one that would guide his entire life. Diop excelled in school. His brilliance was evident, his curiosity unmatched. Teachers recognized his potential and encouraged him to pursue higher education in France, the heart of colonial academic authority. In 1946, Diop arrived in Paris. He was just 23. The city was recovering from war, yet its intellectual life was vibrant. At the Sorbonne, he studied physics, chemistry, mathematics, philosophy, linguistics, and history. He mastered each with relentless discipline. But while immersed in the sciences, his true mission was forming. He was determined to use the tools of modern research to explore Africa's ancient past, objectively, rigorously, scientifically. As early as his mid-20s, Diop proposed something considered unthinkable in European academia: that ancient Egypt was a black civilization with cultural, linguistic, and genetic ties to sub-Saharan Africa. The idea provoked outrage. Entire academic institutions had been built on the belief that Africa's history began with slavery and colonization. Diop threatened this narrative. He challenged world powers with facts. Diop's research led him deep into the origins of ancient Egypt. He examined mummified remains, cultural practices, linguistic structures, and early anthropological records. And the evidence pointed in one direction. Egypt was fundamentally African, both racially and culturally. He argued that the similarities between Wolof and ancient Egyptian languages were not coincidence. For example, pronouns matched, vocabulary overlapped, sentence structures aligned. This was groundbreaking. He studied melanin dosage tests on mummies. He analyzed the social structures of ancient Egypt and found echoes in the customs of West African kingdoms. He argued that the two were not separate worlds, but branches of the same civilizational tree. But Diop's research met fierce resistance. Professors rejected his dissertation repeatedly. Critics dismissed him as a romantic Pan-Africanist. Some accused him of rewriting history for political ends, yet he remained undeterred. In 1954, he published Nations Nègres et Culture, Black Nations and Culture. It was explosive. The book argued that Africa, not Europe or the Middle East, was the cradle of major human innovations, religious, scientific, architectural. It challenged Eurocentric narratives that had dominated for centuries. Many called it dangerous. But across Africa, young scholars saw it as liberating. Diop was not only a scholar, he was deeply political. Returning to Senegal, he joined the struggle for independence. He believed Africa must be united, culturally, scientifically, economically. He founded political parties, promoted the use of African languages in education, and argued for a federally united African state. While his political ambitions were often blocked, his intellectual influence grew. In the 1960s, Diop established a radiocarbon laboratory in Dakar, one of the first of its kind in Africa. Through physics, he continued proving the African origin of ancient civilizations. This was his genius. He fused history with physics, linguistics with anthropology, political science with archaeology. Few scholars had ever mastered so many fields. Even fewer used them to rewrite the story of humanity. In 1974, at the UNESCO Symposium in Cairo, Diop faced an international panel of Egyptologists. For years, critics doubted him, but now they questioned him directly. Diop presented linguistic, cultural, and biological evidence. And before the world, the once controversial idea that ancient Egyptians were African gained new legitimacy. Even his opponents admitted that Diop's work could no longer be ignored. Cheick Anta Diop passed away in 1986, but his legacy only grew stronger. Today, scholars across Africa and the diaspora regard him as one of the greatest intellectuals of the 20th century. He paved the way for Afrocentric scholarship. He inspired leaders, writers, and researchers. He restored dignity to a continent whose history had been distorted for centuries. Cheick Anta Diop once said, "The history of Africa will one day be written, and it will restore the dignity of the African man." That day began with him. This is the story of Cheick Anta Diop, a man who dared to rewrite history, and in doing so, rewrote the destiny of a people.